I'd like to thank everyone who are here this evening for our confirmation hearing. So this committee then is called to order. The Committee on Early Learning, Juvenile Justice, Public Education, and First Generation Initiatives is now called to order. The chairperson has recused herself and asked the vice chair of the committee. I will be the one conducting or presiding over this confirmation hearing. Today's date is Monday, November the 28th, 2016, and the time is about 2 minutes after 6. I'd like to thank the Vice Speaker, Cruz, for joining me this evening, and Senator Tony Ada as well. The confirmation hearing is for the appointment of Mr. Ron McNinch to the Guam Education Board as the business representative. Notices for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all the senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on November 18th, 2016, which is a 5-day notice required by law, and again on November the 25th, 2016, another requirement by law of a 48-hour notice. We have only one testimony, one confirmation, and only one item on the agenda. And what I like for you to do is that when your names are called, and if you want to come up to testify and for or against, I'd like for you to state your name first, then state your position, and then you may proceed with your testimony. If you have anything that is written, I would like for you to also provide a committee of the copy. Provide the committee a copy of your statement or your testimony so that it can be used for the committee report. So, those who've signed, and I'm going to go in the order of those who've signed in. I have 4 chairs up there, so I'd like to invite up Dr. Encito Walter, Julian Laxmans, Rafael Scambleri Jr., and Bruce Long V. Nguyen. I'd also like to welcome another member for joining me, Senator Tom Ada. So we'll go ahead and start from the order in which you were called up, and please state your name and your position, whether you're for or against the nominee.
My name is Encito Walter. I am an associate professor at the University of Guam. I am for yes for Dr. McNinch's confirmation. Ubadiroran, Tirobata Tiropun, Tirori Guam, Tirogari legislature. Kirisore de fason nga may dori kabas nga digiri. I'm speaking to you in my language and culture. And that's the way we can face special respect, admiration to our leaders and to the first people of this beautiful island of Guam. Honorable Speaker Juan Bat, Honorable Vice Speaker Cruz, Honorable Senator Ata, Honorable Senator Ata, Dr. McNinch and his family, our students, honor and distinguished guests. I have known Dr. McNinch for 10 years. He's a friend, and I have trust and respect and admiration for him. Dr. McNinch is ethical. He's a logical thinker. He studies situation before he makes decisions. He does what is the right thing to do. He's a team member. He agrees and disagrees. It helps the team win. He commits to the task, activity, project, etc. He's not a quitter. He tries to find solutions. He will be a positive, contributing member of the Guam Board of Education. I humbly ask for your support. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's an honor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walter. Julian?
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Julian Laksamana. I'm I'm a student of the University of Guam, and also a police officer for 20 years in the Guam Police Department. And I know Dr. McNinch as a professor at UOG, and he's a man of with integrity. That's why I come up in front of you, Your Honor, asking for your support of his nomination. And I don't prefer anything in writing. This thing coming up from the heart. So I humbly ask you for your support once again. Thank you.
You're welcome. Raphael.
Hi, Hafide. My name's Raphael Kimberly Jr. I'm for Dr. McNinch. I come to you today as a student from the University of Guam. I'm currently the president of the Public Administration Legal Studies Club. Dr. McNinch is our advisor, so I personally work close with him in all that we do as a club. And so it's of my personal experience to know that Dr. McNinch is a good leader. He helps provide us with everything necessary to make sure that we accomplish our tasks as students and as student government leaders. He takes it upon himself to help the student that comes to him and asks for help. It's a good opportunity for us to help grow as professional leaders and as professional students in that environment. So I think that's of my opinion that I believe Dr. McNinch is a good candidate for this education board. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bruce Long?
Hi, I'm Bruce
You can
Long
pull
Nguyen.
it a little bit closer.
Hi, I'm Bruce Long Nguyen, and I feel like I nominate Dr. McNinch as for the board, and I would say he is honest and a very intelligent person, and he is the right person for the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the members have any questions for the first set of panelists? No. Well, I want to thank you very much for your presence and your testimony. So I'm going to call the next group of individuals. Thank you. Leonel Legado, Joshua Diaz, Adam Suharto, and somebody said there's one more. Is there another list? Kimberly Dela Cruz. All right, so go ahead and start then with Leonel.
Hopefully, and good evening. My name is Leo. My name is Leonel Legato. You can call me Leo. And my position in Dr. McNinch's confirmation as a board member, I fully support. I am also his teaching assistant. I got to work with him at a close level. I can truly say that he's there and he cares about the students. And there's not one professor that I cannot, compare to Dr. McNinch. I fully support him, and that's it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Joshua.
Hafide Senators. My name is Joshua Diaz, and I am in favor of Dr. McNinch to be on the board. I've only been recently on Guam for about a year, but in that year, Dr. McNinch has helped me with my classes. Every time I asked him if he can help me with something, he gets it done, and he gets it done like in a way where both sides, I guess, works. I also feel like Dr. McNinch, he knows what he's doing, and I feel that if he's on the board, he could contribute more than I would think an average person would. Thank you.
You're welcome. Adam?
Good evening. My name is Adam Suharto, and I'm also for Dr. Oh, there you go.
You can turn up that one, sit off.
But I am also for Dr. McNinch's position. He is my advisor in my major, public administration, and I also have him for a class, and I see that he has a lot of passion for students, and he has a lot of passion for what he does as a professor. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Kimberly?
Hi, half a day, good evening. My name is Kimberly Dela Cruz. I am from the island of Saipan. I have known Dr. McNinch for almost 4 years now, 3.5 to be exact. And I am for Dr. McNinch to be part of the Guam Educational Board. I believe that he will be a great, effective leader, and I believe that he is a great person deep inside. He's a great role model. He's not only a role model to me, he is a role model to his daughter. And especially, I am a mother of 3 wonderful children. They are here with me, and because of him, I would say that they are going to go to college, University of Guam, because of Dr. McNinch, because he's very welcoming, and because of that, I believe he's going to be a great leader for the Guam Education Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that completes the number of individuals who want to testify. If there's anyone out there still interested, we do have a sign-in sheet that you can sign in, and I can call you. So I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this group unless any of the members up here have any questions. Thank you. Ma'am, do you want to testify? Oh, so why don't I go ahead and have you go ahead and state your name. Just go ahead and then I'll have you sign on later on. Just state your name, and then you tell us and whether you are for or against the confirmation.
Day, I'm Karen Tydinko. I'm a current employee at Social Security Administration. I am in total support of Professor Ron McNinch to the Guam Education Board. And I say that because he is very honest. He knows the ADA laws. He's a strong advocate for people in need and students. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Half day and good evening. My name is Joseph Scenario, and I'm in full support of Dr. McNinch's position to the Guam Educational Board. He's also my advisor as a criminal justice major at the University of Guam, and he has done nothing but help me get to where I am today and succeeding in my educational career. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else who's sitting out there, you still have an opportunity to testify. And if you don't, please feel free of submitting maybe your written testimony if you like, and you can email it to Senator Underwood's office, or you can have it dropped off here at 155 Hessler Street at the mail room. And so we should be able to get that to provide then the information on the committee report. So at this moment then, since there aren't anyone else who would like to testify, I'm going to call the nominee, Dr. Ron McNinch, to please come forward. You may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hafa-Day Senators, my name is Ron McNinch. I've been appointed by Governor Calvo to serve on the Education Board. This is my confirmation hearing, and I certainly appreciate support from the legislature in this confirmation process, and I am very pleased to be here tonight. This appointment is for about 1 year. So I have a list of points that I have on on my prepared remarks. I want to thank Governor Calvo for appointing me, and I also want to thank Speaker Wampat for expediting this confirmation hearing. It was scheduled within a week. It went very deliberately. I also appreciate the fact that this hearing is being held after 6 p.m. It's a time convenient for parents and school children to watch. I also realize that this hearing is held after your session today, so I know that this was a long day for all of you, and I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight for this. Also, very quickly, I'd like to thank certainly the students and other supporters that showed up, as well as Governor Walter, Karen Tydenko, and Kim Dela Cruz and her daughters, and I can never pronounce her daughters' names right, so I apologize. Other than certain coordination items, I've avoided talking to the legislature. I've avoided talking to Adelup about this appointment for obvious reasons. I know that that's the normal protocol, but I just avoided it just to avoid potential conflicts. I did speak to Mr. Torres. Mr. Torres gave me some, from Speaker Wampat's office, he gave me some very good input on things I might be able to give the committee additional information on, which I'll do tonight. And I also spoke to the governor's chief of staff about getting my military records straightened out because I was having trouble with that initially. And so at this point, I'd like to just mention the two items that Mr. Torres asked me to prepare for. Under the law, I'm required to give what's called a DD-214, which is a form to show my military service. Because I retired a long time ago and because the records have been basically archived, it's taking a while for them to get that, but I did provide the committee a basic discharge document showing my military service. I was discharged as an Army Reserve captain in 1997. I initially enlisted. I was an enlisted person for a number of years also in the National Guard. And by the way, it was very, very common during my time with the reserves or with the National Guard that there was, that was about it. You did reserve types of duty, and my record will reflect pretty much I was a peacetime reserve person for the most part. I am being appointed under the business line for the board, and the board has, of course, 9 members and then supplemental members. But of the voting members, one of the members is a business member, and I've been appointed by Governor Calvo to represent this business line. And typically, people don't view me as a business person. I think I need to explain that a little bit under this particular line. And Mr. Torres mentioned that it's a good point to mention. Basically, the law says that one person who's employed in an upper-level managerial position in a private business, I believe I meet that qualification along a number of lines. I've had a sole proprietorship business since 1997 for at least 15 of the last 20 years. And I provided my business license to reflect that. That license has been current for quite a number of years. As a sole proprietor, you are the most senior person in your business. The primary business activity that I engage in is consulting and research training. And it's a pretty common type of business for a person who does the kinds of things that I do. To kind of supplement my activity with business in the business community, I think whoever holds this position, the business line, they need to be integrated with the business community here. And I think there are a number of key points that indicate I'm very integrated with the business community here on Guam. I've been a Rotarian for the last 20 years. I've held quite a number of offices in the Rotary clubs. I've been a 2-time past president of clubs, and I was a president of the Tumon Bay Club. Also, I've been in Rotary. I was in Rotary to promote my business, and that was just the key point about that. I was also a member of the Guam Chamber of Commerce from about 2003 to 2013. I was an active member of that organization. I was on the military committee, or the military group within the Guam Chamber of Commerce, but I was only on that for 1 or 2 years, and then I went to the other portions of the chamber. When the Guam Women's Chamber started up a few years ago, I changed my membership from the Guam Chamber of Commerce to the Guam Women's Chamber, and I was, I think, the first male member of the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce To be frank, the Guam Women's Chamber is more fun than the Guam Chamber of Commerce, and also they're better to working with small businesses, and they're really good small business oriented, and I certainly have learned a lot with them, and I serve on a couple of committees with them. I also served for 4 years on the Guam American Cancer Society board, including 2 years as president, and by the way, for all these activities I used my personal funds. I didn't use any university position or any other funds. I did this as part of my business activity. In general, I've included a few points related to my applicable background for this position that are general. I attended public schools for my K through 12 education. I attended 4 different public universities or colleges for my college education, including a community college where I took ROTC only. Both of my parents only went to school until the 8th grade, but both of them viewed education as very important. My parents divorced when I was 6 years old, and about half of the children on Guam are in divorced or separated households, and so I understand the hardships of living with divorce. Also, after I was 11 years old, my mother was a single mother. My stepfather died of cancer, and that's what really led me later on to being active with the American Cancer Society here. In high school, I was active in junior ROTC in the science club, and I was also active in several sports. When I first came to Guam in 1996, my small nephew, Michael, came with us. He was 11 years old. He went to Price Elementary for a year. He loved it, and he really loved Guam a lot. However, his mother wanted him to return back to Georgia. I began consulting on Guam around 1997 to supplement my university pay. Also, I think a business license was required for certain types of university external employment. I think that's what the rule was at that time. Part of my consulting deals with technical human resources issues. I'm a specialist in very technical areas of human resources. I'm also a credentialed senior professional in human resources, and I deal with technical human resources problems, particularly in the government sector. I'm a merit specialist, and I'm a employment specialist. On the other side, and also along the consulting part, I'm a fraud examiner, and I spot fraud or work with organizations to minimize fraud within their organizations, as well as the government. Another part of my activity is related to training. Initially, my big motivation for becoming a sole proprietor was the government came up with a requirement for ethics training. It was a great lucrative potential area for training for professors, but really the government just doesn't have a lot of money for ethics training, unfortunately, and so that part of my consulting plans didn't work out so well. I do train people on a wide variety of activities and areas. Luckily, the law doesn't require the private business person holding this position to be necessarily successful or profitable in their endeavor, luckily for me, because a lot of my activity I do pro bono. I do it for free, either because the organizations I work with don't have the money or resources, or the people that I work with don't have money or resources to do the things they want to do. On the educational issue that we do have an issue with education, and I think that having a 9th member of this board is very important. I hope one's appointed and confirmed very quickly, particularly if I'm fortunate and on the board. I'd also like to openly suggest to everyone to always look at mediation as solutions to issues if it's possible. I think that having 4 new members by January will help everyone to resolve some of the current issues. I would like to humbly ask for your vote for this position. I greatly appreciate the opportunity and courtesy to be able to speak here tonight. I'm very pleased, and to be frank, I'm surprised. My students have showed up. It was kind of like a surprise party a little bit. And so I certainly appreciate that. But Madam Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity, and Senators, thank you.
Thank you very much. We received your packet, and I'm glad that my staff, Mr. Torres, was able to sit with you, because we have to vet your application to make sure that all of the documents are accurate and complete.
Sure.
And I know that you had stated earlier in your testimony that your appointment is then for 1 year.
Sure,
Is that
just a
what the
year.
governor had?
Yeah, it's until February 2017, ma'am.
Okay, I wanted to make sure, because in the legislation, we've actually provided certain number of years, but then, of course, since the governor is the appointing authority, then he can make that determination. So I just want to make sure that is clear for the record, and so that it'll be reported out accordingly.
Yes. And also, I believe it's very clearly stated in the law that if you're running out an existing appointment, it's only for that term.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. In fact, it's 3102.7B, paragraph B.
Yes, we have that. And in reviewing, of course, your packet, you are correct in terms of providing the information that's needed regarding your military service. And I know you've provided an affidavit for that, and of your military service. You've also provided a statement of your financial interest, which is your research and training consultant license, and being the sole proprietor of that, and your license also is included here. And I'm glad that you brought that up in your testimony, because that was one of the very first questions I was going to ask, but Frank did definitely an excellent job to make sure then that he brought that up with you, and you brought it up yourself. So
Madam Speaker, may I note something very quickly? I greatly appreciate the professional support and interaction from Mr. Frank Torres in this effort. He really helped me to know some of the things that I needed to know when I came in here, and his professionalism and deliberate assistance was greatly appreciated.
Thank you for that comment. And in your packet, of course, is that, and just let you know that we did receive a letter of support as well by Marian Tincher. So we have that, here, aside from all the other testimonies from all of the others who are here this evening. So that's one question down. So the other questions that I have then for you, and this is normally the same questions I ask all appointees, so you're not being singled out, by the way.
Yes, ma'am, I absolutely.
I just want to let you know that.
Yes.
Because and thank you, by the way, for a thorough description of not just your academic background, but other information as well for the listening audience out there. I had asked the Vice Speaker at first if he wanted to talk specifically about, this board, which is the hybrid board. But I think you were here anyway long enough to really understand. I'm not sure yet. What year did you arrive in Guam?
1996.
96. Okay, well, yeah, it was about that time really when the whole discussion started about an elected school board that was by the district, and it was thrown out in the courts. And so we started out as the governor, of course, being the sole authority of the Board of Education. Then that switched to an appointed board by members by the governor. And then the legislature had passed legislation to have an election of board members, but by district. And then that later on was thrown out. Then through Congressman Underwood at that time, then the Organic Act was amended to change it from the governor to now government, opening the door for the legislature again to introduce legislation to allow for more control or representation of the community and a representative reflection of the community on the board. And so at that time we were left anyway without a board for a while. But the whole problem has been that we have seen, and that's why you see the changes in the different types of boards that I've just listed to you. And I'd like to just read a little bit of the committee report, the findings for Public Law 30-183. And when we got the clearance to be able to create a Guam Election Policy Board, which meant an all elected individuals, there has been constant lack of accountability with the education of our students and the management of public funds for education. This board then was to give all Guam residents a direct choice in educational leadership and leading to control over the accountability of education. The policy board has been operating as, and this is very important because at one time, they've been operating as a fourth branch of the government, often creating its own rules regarding its effects on the entire government. And yet, when it finds itself in a position of hardship, they run to the legislature and the governor to basically save the department. And having seen that, we knew then that that has to change because we couldn't say that they're totally independent. They're that fourth branch when all of their funding, 100% of their funding comes from the local government, and then of course there are portions of it from the federal government. So then we knew then that there has to be a strong organization structure that should be in place. There's also, I like to quote former Speaker Tony Mpinko, that he never supported an elected school board and always felt that the buck stops with the governor, primarily because of funding. And he figures that if he has all appointed boards by the governor, then the governor would take heed in terms of, providing funding to, the department. The hybrid, however, was created primarily is to have control by the community because their children are in the school system and their taxes are paying to run, to support the school system. But then, taking, of course, Speaker Mpinko's statement that the buck stops with the governor. Therefore, then, the thought would be is that if the governor is able to put individuals, his choice of individuals, to sit on the board, then those are the members that can always go to the governor to say that, Governor, we're going to need this money. We need for you to have these monies released to the department, that you are going to be the conduit for the board. But then at the same time, we wanted to make sure, too, that the individuals who are going to be appointed just can't be anybody. That one, you want somebody with some business or financial background because 35% of all our monies, 35 is up to 45 now. More than 45% of our total monies collected into the government goes to the Department of Education. And that's why we need somebody with a budget or finance background. The second individual has to be an educator, a retired educator or a school administrator. And then the third would be a parent who has a child in our public school system. And so that's, where basically we're at. And I bring that up primarily then to lead into my question to ask you, since you are an appointee of the governor and you serve at the pleasure of the governor, in spite of what maybe some other board members have said, but all appointees serve at the pleasure of the governor. And whether they choose to step down or not, of course, is another question, but not for us to judge. But what do you see then really as your role in the Department of Education board, as an appointee of the governor?
Sure. Well, that's a very good question. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we said in the very beginning, I'm a one-year, timeout appointee on this. And I think that in general, the governor has appointed me, but I'm here to serve the community. And when the governor talked to me, he had a very brief conversation with me about this appointment. And he basically asked me if I could do three things. And the three things are very deliberate and very simple. He asked me to be as transparent as possible. Holding this meeting tonight at 6 o'clock is about as transparent as we can get. And I'm very pleased that you and your staff have done that. That's just an example. Holding transparent processes are very important. Following the law, following the rules, and even more so, knowing the laws and knowing the rules, which also means we have to realize when we don't understand things. And when we don't understand things, we have to be able to go back and check it for that. Understanding rules and following rules and then applying best practice is really, hopefully, what every board member and every nonprofit, government, and not-for-profit board does. You make sure you follow the rules. You make sure you follow the laws. You follow the rule of law. And then the third thing that the governor asked me to do is serve the community and serve the parents and children of Guam in this position and look out for their best interests. And that was his three main points that he expressed to me, and I wrote them down. They're well taken, and I think that would be my approach. What is going to be compliant and transparent? What's going to be compliant with rules and laws? What's going to be compliant to best practice? And then how can we best serve the community? The advantage that I have is I am going to be probably in this position for just 1 year. And so I can have a very objective and deliberate view of a lot of these things. I think part of the problem, and I've been on many boards, not just the ones I've mentioned, I've been on many panels and boards. Sometimes it's good for particularly on nonprofit boards or organizational boards, for leadership to rotate or for people to rotate on and off of these boards. And it's healthy to do that. And I think that even with my student organizations at the university, I say the same thing. It's good for them to rotate, their leadership positions and learn to do new things. The problem, I think, is, and here's the key danger, is if people fall into routines, they also fall into groupthink. And that is, if they do the same thing the same way every time, it stifles innovation. It reinforces sometimes the view that what they're doing is the optimal way of doing it, when it may be the least efficient or an unhealthy way of doing things. And so sometimes having newer people on boards are important. But in answer to your question, I think serving the community is what my charge or mandate was from the governor, was to serve the community to the best of my ability. And it's also, I hope, and I believe it would be the same mandate from this body. It would be to serve the community's best interests in this position.
Can you tell me if you support this hybrid board, you still support it or not? Because I know in your testimony at the time, you didn't support an full elected school board, but now we have a hybrid. So, and you've seen it actually, at least from the outside looking in.
Sure.
How do you still support then this hybrid board?
Well, I don't want to be super technical or anything else.
No, I don't want you to be either.
I do have a few general suggestions, possibly, that might be considered for the future if this type of board
that's exactly
continues.
what I want to hear then.
Okay. I think that this board should be staggered. Half should be elected, and maybe whether it's 4 years, so half is elected, 2 years, and the other half is elected the other 2 years. Stagger it a little bit. I think that this board should have more pay. At maximum, they get $6,000 a year. The other boards get $10,000 or $12,000 a year. There's really modest competition for the other boards. There's no competition for this board. I think that giving a better stipend might help a little bit. It might stir up competition a little bit if it was simply maybe $1,000 a month rather than the $500 a month. Getting elected to this board is almost as hard as getting your name on the ballot for governor. And this is for a school board. This is for a subordinate level board. I think if the primary is used and you have 20 candidates and you narrow it down to double the number of open positions, that might be a better method. It's really hard to get your name on the ballot. Also, it would be nice if we are going to use this group election process, just like with judges, you don't have to vote yes for a person. You can vote no for the person. If we have 6 candidates in 6 positions, it'd be nice to say no. No, we don't want this person. And And then you add the yeses and nos together, and if they have more nos, they don't return. I know that's the Soviet system, and I haven't talked about this in a long time, but that's how it used to work when there were limited candidates in the old Soviet Union. I think there need to be less educators on this board and more housewives and mothers. I think that having more parents, particularly of younger children, we don't have any minorities on this board. We don't have any Chukis people on this board, and that's unfortunate. My good friend and colleague, Governor Walter, was nominated. He was declared not eligible because he's an FAS citizen, not a U.S. citizen. I think maybe we could change that a little bit. Why not have a FAS, respected member of the FAS community on this board? I think this board should have term limits. I think once your 4 years is done, thank you very much, wait another term and come back on board. And then it might even, if it depends on what options are taken, it might only need 7 members, not 9. The general rule of thumb is the smaller the organization is for a board, the span of control, when you have 9, the span of control is easily fractured into factions that don't work well. But with 7 for a board, I'm not talking about a legislative body or anything else like this, I'm talking about a board, 7 might be a better number for this type of activity. This is the most important board on Guam. You're absolutely right. It has the highest budget, it has the highest responsibilities, it has the most pressure. There are 30,000 kids and probably 30,000 parents and 60,000 grandparents that are upset at any given moment at this board. And so that's a lot of pressure on a board, and certainly my hat is off to people who are certainly willing to serve under those conditions. I'm not critical of this board, in terms of failure. Every board, things don't work on every board. It's just how do we dust ourselves off and get things back on track and start working on things in a deliberate way. So those are my 7 general suggestions. I do think about these things a lot, and it's a part of just actually some of the stuff I do when I consult with companies or businesses. These are just my general views. And by the way, I just wrote these down. I didn't prepare for them. It's just, I thought that was what the question you were going to ask.
Well, I'd like to say that you were consistent from the time you gave your testimony on this bill, when it was on the 30th Guam legislature, and we're in the 33rd. Well, that's good to hear. You have presented yourself as a vigorous advocate for the application of Title IX procedures and processes at the University of Guam. And do you, or will you, continue to advocate for the same for GDOE?
Sure. That's a very good question, ma'am. Know the law, follow the law. What does the law say? What does the standard procedure say? What does the best practice say? So Title IX is federal law. The higher educational amendments is higher law. The FERPA is federal law. We have quite a number of laws, not just Title IX, that at any given moment the GDOE board has to try to comply with, and in as much good faith as possible comply with. Now, I have to say, and this is an old rule of organizations, every organization makes mistakes. Every one of them. Every group of people, especially when a lot of people are involved in decisions, are going to make mistakes. The question is, how do we learn from, well, first, how do we recognize we've made mistakes? And secondly, how do we learn from them and teach others to avoid them? And that's a big part of the process. Title IX, at its very core, deals with sex discrimination. By sex discrimination, discrimination between males and females. That's the basis of Title IX. Everything else that people maybe try to put to Title IX are the additional parts, but at its core, it's how do we provide young people, male and female, the same and equal opportunities to have a good learning environment where their gender is not a factor to achieving a good education. And how can we do that? And certainly that's a big part of Title IX. I've long advocated Title IX. I've long advocated the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I've long advocated all the other federal laws you can imagine. It makes actually a very good hands-on learning environment when students learn how to advocate for laws. It's an important part. Especially one of the key things here, and I'm not critical of people here when it's simply they don't know these things. And I give people a mulligan or a kind of break when genuinely they don't know these things. And then when they're educated, they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know, and then they fix it. And I'm a bit, I'm aware of that's a factor. And we have to maybe allow people to be in a safe enough environment to admit to themselves and to admit to others, hey, I didn't know I made a mistake, and what do I need to do to remedy it? And that sometimes is important. The key question is, it's not catching the mistakes, it's not blaming people. What it is it's how do we fix things and move on and not have the same mistakes happen again and again. And that's really the hard part. And how do we get people to buy into these new ways of doing things that don't alienate people or make people feel like they're blamed or have to justify their previous actions? Every organization makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. God knows I've made mistakes. Made mistakes all over the place. I made mistakes here on some of the views I've taken in previous years. I was just telling one of my classes about that today. I made a mistake here. And then I've complained about mistakes I felt that people are making. I've been vocal. I'm not somebody who's shy. I'm willing to tell people, here's what I think, or here's what I think it's right or wrong. I'm not shy about doing that. On the other hand, I've had people explain to me their views, and I changed my view. I think that's an important part of not only serving on a board, it's an important life skill. And so that would be my general response. Title IX is important. I'm an advocate of Title IX everywhere. And there's another point that's really important. 17 GCA in Section 3, in the area of that title, has a sex discrimination law also for Guam. It mirrors Title IX if we read the statute. There's a sexual discrimination statute that's almost identical. So the Guam law parallels the federal law.
And when you're confirmed, is that the governor will swear you in to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Organic Act of Guam, all laws applicable to Guam, and the laws of Guam.
As I'll gladly do so, if I have the providence to be confirmed.
Without discussing, of course, this whole case with the superintendent, are you going into the board with any preconceived decision without actually getting all the facts first and reviewing the report?
Yeah, that's a great question also, Madam Speaker. I think everybody has preconceptions. I have preconceptions. I've had opinions I've openly stated. Here's what I think. There's a huge difference between a barfly expressing an opinion somewhere and a person who serves on the board that has the trust and responsibility of the public to make deliberative decisions. Night and day. And so I think that in this case, I know probably as much as all of you know. But I have to say that I do think that a lot of work is going to need to be taken to make corrections or make adjustments so that things can be resolved. I think that anyone who would be agreeing to be on this board and not knowing that up front would, that's not good for anyone. I know this is going to be a lot of hard work ahead.
My colleagues have any questions? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. McNinch, for accepting the nomination from the governor. And I've got to say that I've enjoyed the opinions that you've given. You certainly have given a lot of opinions. I'm just, quite honestly, I'm a little concerned about if you were to serve on the board, that you're going to lose some of that independence that you currently have right now to be able to just say, you're wrong, and I think here's how we should correct it. Whereas when you sit on the board, you know that you're there, appointed by the governor, and he's had his little conversation with you as to what his expectations were. And I think there's that natural disposition to want to really, what's the term to use, for lack of any other term, to please the authority that put you in there in the first place. So in that regard, then I think it's going to take away some of your independence. Can you maybe give me your thoughts on that?
Sure. I'm not meaning to sound facetious, but I'm Irish, and if you hang out with Irish people a lot, you'll find out that it's a cultural thing to have a lot of opinions and talk a lot and have views that others might not like. And it's funny because a few months ago, my wife came up to me and she goes, Ron, you posted something on Facebook and our daughter hates it and she's mad at you. And I told my wife to tell my daughter to stand in line. There's a lot of other people mad at me. And she's just going to have to wait. Because at any given moment, people get mad at me. And you can't kind of have opinions that people don't get mad at. But one interesting thing about having opinions that people get mad at is actually it makes people mad enough to think of responses. In that, you see, knowledge doesn't come from everybody agreeing. Knowledge comes from people hating each other and arguing with each other and having tension. A wise man and a fool no more than the wise man alone. That's an old saying that's very true. The thing is, it's very important that people debate and think about things and think about them genuinely. And I hate to say it, I hate politics. I really do. I hate politics. And I have a Ph.D. in politics. What does that say about me? It says that, I have my own struggles with opinions. But I also, and this gets my wife mad at me all the time too, is she goes, can't you just shut up sometimes? You get people mad at you. Because I say things that sometimes people get mad at. And even, last night she told me not to have certain opinions that I have. And I listen to her and I follow everything she tells me to do. So, yeah. But so
I'm not sure if you're saying that your being a member of the board is in any way going to diminish that independent, opinions that you normally give, which I think is good. It's healthy. But again, just being a member of the board, there's some organizational loyalty that inevitably will develop. You're there at the behest of the governor. You keep saying that you're just going to be a one-year director, and then that's it, as if you're anticipating that you're really going to drop some bombshells in there, and that you're going to be sent on your way. And if that's your way of saying that, no, your independence is going to be no less than it is right now outside of that boardroom, then say it.
Sure. I think that I've been on plenty of boards, and if people talk to me before I'm on the board, during the board, and after the board, regardless of which boards I'm on, I'm pretty much the same person. And I've been on boards. I've been on the election board here. I was just as opinionated on the election board, which was a really emotional board, as I was anywhere else. And I've always had strong opinions. But there's a key thing, and it's a really, really important point. A person can have an opinion but not have any basis for their opinion or not check what they need to check for their opinion. And that's a big part of the formulation for me is, I read the stuff that's important and appropriate. I try to know it. I prepare for it. I think about it. So then I make an informed decision. I have an informed opinion. And we do our best with that. It might not even be perfect, but it's one of the key mistakes a lot of people make on important boards is they need to make sure that they've read all of the right stuff when they do their formulation for a decision. And whether it's the laws or rules, it's very, very important when you have an opinion, especially when your opinions matter. There's a difference between having an opinion and saying, We need to do something about this. There's a difference between that and making policy which involves government direction to take government action or decide not to take government action. And that's more than opinion. That takes a lot of thought and deliberation. As all of you know, that's what it takes. There is one other little element to this. The school board's 9 people. Actually, it's like a legislative caucus. And so a lot of the things, the behaviors you see is small group behavior. And a lot of the dynamics that go on within these boards. And I'll tell you, I think the education board, as much as people may be critical of it here or there, or I'm critical of it sometimes, they deserve a lot of credit for doing many, many good things. But the thing is, having opinions that are contrary, a person can disagree with me and still get along with me. And I think that's a part of it too. Or they may disagree with me and not like a choice that I've made. And that's okay. It's always been okay. I've made a lot of people mad having opinions that they don't like. And I'm not just saying that off the top of my head. I know I've made people mad at me. And on the other hand, I've made people really happy with me. And so I don't know. It's a two-edged sword. But certainly, I think my mandate is to serve the community, serve the students, and work with the parents. And that's certainly what I would endeavor to do. And what I mean by being a short timer on the board is that really, to me, I think that I know that there's going to be a lot of work needed to be done in the space of 1 year. And there might be somebody from the Chamber of Commerce or from the Women's Chamber who might say, yeah, I'd like to be a board member. And, then they would like to do it. And I don't believe that I'm going to make a nest out of this board position if there are great people in the community who also want to do it. But I do think that we need to have a full board and take steps to address the things we need to address when we can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. McNinch. Yeah, and I like that. I like that when you talk about serving the community and serving our people, and that's what it's about. We don't all have the perfect answers, and we don't all have the right questions. But when you go in there with an open mind and getting that knowledge from the back and forth between members or whatever it may be, as long as the outcome is always for the good of the people and good of our island, then I think we always accomplish something. I'd like to welcome your wife and your daughter here, and Dr. Walters and Acting Superintendent Sanchez. Thank you for all being here. I wish the rest of the board members were here too to support your confirmation here tonight. And you're right. I think the next year is going to be a very busy year for the Education Board. Many issues in front of you. And I think that not only with you being busy with the Education Board, being busy up at UOG at the same time, hopefully with those two interacting with each other, you don't have no time for election polls. You can stop doing election polls. But I think I'd like to thank you for answering the governor's call for stepping up to the Board of Education. And I look forward to voting on your confirmation. And you have my support and you have my vote. And anyone that comes before this body that wants to serve on a board, to serve the people of Guam, always deserves that opportunity to do so. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
I think probably we should make one correction first. You said February 2017. It's February 2018.
I'm sorry. That's right. I apologize.
And the reason why it is only that is because you are filling the unexpired term of Mr. Torres's current term.
That's correct, sir. I apologize. Yes.
No, the speaker was trying to make it clear, and so I just wanted to make sure that we understood that. And yes. You and I have exchanged more emails than I have with any of my colleagues on this issue of Title IX, the Clery Act, and the protection of students. So, and I probably would have grilled you as much as I did Mark but I know from reading the hundreds of pages that you filed with the district court representing yourself in retaliation actions under Title IX and the initial actions that were taken, that you understand clearly what Title IX does and can and should do. So I'm not going to grill you and have you state your positions on that, though you're free to do so. I
would like to say one thing.
I just want to make sure that the fact that the speaker asked you, would you continue to be that advocate that I've known and supported over the last 3 or 4 years on our joint crusade to protect the students of the university, then you have my full support. And when you stated that, then I felt I didn't need to get into the minutia. My questioning of Mark was that he didn't read it when I thought he was going to read it.
Sure.
You may have overread it but the thing is that at least I know that you know that it exists and what the various provisions are, and I'm just on good faith hoping that you're going to implement it as the law was written by the federal government.
Sure. Well, the thing I wanted to mention to you, Mr. Vice Speaker, and also to your colleagues, and I want to say this to the community also, I have known, and by the way, I don't mean this in any diminishment to anyone else, but I have known few people in my lifetime who have cared so much about young people as yourself. And I mean that totally sincerely.
And that's what I'm hoping, is that you're going to take that, the care and the concern that you had when you would text me at 11:30 at night and tell me this happened, that kind of passion and determination of filing 45-page briefs and complaints and points and authorities to the district court on your own, not being written by any attorney, but yourself, is the same passion that you're going to take to this board in the implementation of these laws. Without my specifically asking you about them, I've read all the stuff that you sent me, so I know that you know what the law is supposed to be, and so I'm hoping that despite the fact that the governor removed people for doing things that they thought was the correct thing to do, that you will, if confirmed to this board, do the same thing, regardless of what the appointing authority feels about it. You will do what the law demands.
Sure. I will, as I said, to the best of my ability, I'll make sure I know the law and follow the law and follow the rules and regulations to every extent possible. And that certainly is my goal and how I'm going to look at it. But the other point that I think is important is if we don't speak up when there are bad things, what does that really say about us? And if we're real leaders, what does that say about us? And so we have a duty, and every parent has a duty. Every relative of every child has that duty, and it's certainly one that I take seriously, and it's one that I believe our community takes seriously. But thank you, Vice Speaker.
I'm satisfied, Madam Speaker.
Did you have another question? Okay, Santrada.
Just going back to this short timer perspective that you have. Obviously, you probably have some things already in mind that you want to go in there and jump on and hopefully get that accomplished within that 12-month time frame. So I would just ask, is addressing the issue on the Simon Sanchez High School one of those?
No, sir, it's not.
Okay, so can you explain that?
Sure, because the board has a professional staff to deal with things like that, and when it comes time for the board to really deal with it, or if we're asked as a board to deal with it, that would be my role. See, the key thing is the board doesn't act individually, it acts as a collective body, and that's the key to the board. And so
I understand. And the board can either sit there and wait until it's asked, or it can be proactive and say, let's put forth our recommendation to DPW as to how we as a board think they should proceed.
So from that perspective, absolutely, I'm sua sponte, you get it done, no question. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as an individual, I won't do that. I'll work with my other board members to do that.
I understand.
And I think that's an important thing that we need to remember when we're on a board, that we have to have the full support of our colleagues if we really want to take affirmative and deliberate action.
Right. But there's usually one in the group that will kind of...
Oh yeah, I'll be that, no doubt.
Okay,
no doubt.
fine.
Yeah, I'm Irish. So
the other the other thing is the issue with the superintendent. Now, right now, of course, that issue is being played out in court, and that could take a while.
Sure.
In the meantime, we have someone who's the acting, and we know that normally the dynamics is, well, don't want to do anything that's really permanent because I'm just acting. Is that something that that would be an issue that you would take a look at closely, so that there's some kind of permanence in there? I don't know how we're going to do it. I mean,
sure.
I don't want to prejudge that he's not going to come back, and on the other hand, this guy has got to move like I am the permanent superintendent.
Sure. There's acting, and then there's pretending. And I think that's the key distinction, is that, when someone's acting in the position, they have full power to do that, good, bad, and ugly. That's the reality. And I think that's what the law says. When you read the law, when the position's vacant, that's what the fallback is. If that's what the law says, as a board member, that's the expectation. Because ultimately, if you look at all the various powers or duties of the board, number one is the superintendent. That's the first, number A, superintendent. And that's what we do. And regardless of who's that superintendent, permanent, interim, or acting, or anything else, I'm not going to put up with a pretending superintendent. I will, definitely put my foot down on that if I'm on a board and make an issue with it. We have to have, you have to have a leader. DOE has to have a leader. And it's certainly not the board. The board's a group of people from the community, representing policy consensus. Leadership happens with the superintendent, it happens with the principals at the schools, it happens with the individual teachers themselves. And it's a deliberative process. I know, and I got people mad at me, this is one of the main times I get people mad at me. When the JFK issue happened a few years ago, I got so mad at the school board, I told them, and I wrote a weekly column at that time for the Mariners Variety, I said, why don't they form a rat patrol themselves and go down there and deal with this issue? And finally, ultimately, the Attorney General had to deal with it because the board didn't do anything. And so certainly I'm mindful of when things fall apart, the board has to make an affirmative step and do things. And even I have said that publicly when boards fail like that. But that's not a common thing, luckily for us. It does happen, though.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Not dealing with the superintendent issue, but on another issue.
Sure.
There are two issues that I have appeared before the board of the Guam board and asked them for assistance in.
Okay.
And I'm going to mention them to you so that you know. Over a year ago, I went to them because of the fights that were going on in the schools. And at that time, they were supposed to have a policy adopted on dealing with the violence in schools and the steel toes that are being used to kick students around. And I'm still waiting.
Sure.
And that never came out. I know there was a recent board meeting where they were talking about it, but it's been 12 months. I mean, an elephant could be gestated in this time. So that has to move. You and I worked together to make sure that the University of Guam had a reasonable fraternization policy. I know both of us aren't happy with the graduate student provision, but we are willing to take at least the preliminary decision to prohibit any fraternization between an undergraduate and any professor or any management. And working together, we were able to get the board to do something about that last March. I have been speaking to the previous, I guess the incumbent superintendent, and in May, when I was told that he was too busy preparing for FESPAC, having the same petulance that you have, though I'm not Irish, I went to the board and I said, I'm not happy that I have been waiting since March, and I have been promised a non-fraternization policy. And I was assured at the May meeting of the board that it would be done before school started. And now the first semester is ending, and there is still no prohibition of fraternization between faculty, staff, and students. I'm looking to your leadership and the same kind of insistence that both you and I had in pushing the university to move in very short order to get this thing done at GDOE before the anniversary of my letter to the superintendent saying the university did it, GCC did it, where are you?
Sure. Sir, thank you. And by the way, Mr. Vice Speaker, I can make you honorarily Irish, and maybe you can make me honorarily Chamorro also. That sounds like on fights in schools, I want to be very blunt. I come from a military school background. I taught military schools for 5 years, and so I'm really discipline-oriented. I'm discipline-oriented in my current job. People wear Obscene T-shirts. I make them turn them inside out. I don't put up with people, doing shenanigans at our school or anything else. But there's an important part about fighting in schools, absolutely, and there are ways to really address. I've done studies on this. This is the nice thing about it is I'm coming to the board having studied these things. We asked private school people. Remember back when the military left? Military left our public school system. If you talk to the military about why they left our public school system, it wasn't quality of education. It was their kids were being beat up in the schools, and that was the big deal. And if you talk to Tom Sheldon, who was with the Air Force, he was the Air Force attorney at that time, that's what the big deal was, is that we had uncontrolled bullying and kids getting beat up in their schools. It was a big problem back then. Steel toes or these fightings with videotapes. I know that somebody told me there was a policy, don't videotape these kids when they fight. I want them to be videotaped. I want to see who's fighting. And we kick them out of school and send them to some other process. I remember not that long ago, a little over 10 years ago, I was sitting right here, and one of the senators wanted to raise the maximum age for public schools to 22 years old, and they did it. Only 2 senators spoke up about it at that time, Senator Wampat and Senator Brown. It was crazy to increase the number to 22. We have an adult high school at GCC. We have a GED program. We have alternatives. I'm just mentioning this to show, one, I've really thought about these things for a long time, but the other thing is, parents send their kids to private school, not because of quality of education here, because we studied it. They send them to private school because social concerns with school children is out of control. And they want their children to be in a more safe learning environment. So you're absolutely on point. It's not just an issue that you have as a senator, as a leader. It's an issue many parents have. And we have a bullying law. The 30th Guam legislature passed a bullying law and updated it to a cyberbullying law later on. And the thing is, though, we need something more, and we need absolutely to do something about bullying. It's an important issue, and it's an important issue for parents. You do a survey of the parents, you ask them what's the most important, it's their kids' safety. They don't want these things happening with their kids. Steel toe shoes, stuff like that, that's That's simply, especially if they're doing them for fighting deliberately. I'm very much on dealing with violence in our schools or young people who act that way. On the UOG policy and on the DOE policy, I'll tell you, this is how I really feel, is a young person is in an educational institution to learn, and their learning environment is based upon their ability to trust the people that they're dealing with at all levels, whether they're staffers or teachers or administrators, that they can trust them and that they can have implicit trust. I am of the opinion, if I had it my way, I'd come to you by March with a bill saying a teacher, I don't care where they're at, if they have sexual relations with a school student, regardless of age, prosecute them. To me, it's a violation of the public trust in a lot of ways. Not only of the student, they're public employees. They're supposed to be held to a higher standard. And if I had it my way, I'd throw them in jail. I would bar them from teaching. I'd take any number of means, because to be frank, telling people they shouldn't do things doesn't seem to be working. I don't even think policy works sometimes, but I agree 100%. If I had it my way, these would be criminal activities. And I'm a big advocate of the criminal justice process when people do criminal things. And that's where I'd have to come to the legislature and say, please make this criminal. And I'd hopefully have the board's full approval on it. This should be criminal. And I believe somebody was telling me there's a federal law also that might apply to this very subject, and I just need to research it more. And I just off the top of my head, but one former FBI agent was telling me about it, that a public school teacher violating the trust of the public or doing these shenanigans with students, you can go after them. To me, a young person in a classroom should not be able to consent to anything except to learn. And that should be the reality. And I feel very strongly about this, and I think all of us in this room do. We can't have tolerance, and that's part of the issue. And that's part of the Irish thing, is you get fed up with it.
Thank you. And one of the other issues that I had in my discussions with them was that they have this concern that there are young employees, and I tried to impress upon the superintendent at the time, I don't care if it's a 19-year-old student aide, as long as they have the title of student aide, they shall not, and they are prohibited from having any amorous relationships with students in their charge.
I 100% agree. I think that any position of trust or responsibility anyone has, and that includes any employee in our school system, these rules should apply to. I've always been very clear on that. And I guess part of the problem is if I had it my way, and I hate to sound like I'm this crazy about this thing, I would have every single school teacher in our public school system check through the APHIS system to make sure they don't have any convictions anywhere in the United States. That's how strict I am. But I don't know whether I could get everyone to agree to it or get the support to make sure we've done a sufficient background check on everyone. That came up for me when I was shocked with the Matt Rector issue, when I found out he had a criminal record and he was teaching school for many years. And we can't let people, and by the way, we have people who go off island to get education, who tell them what's happened to them off island, they come here, and we're not able to check these things. But with the APHIS, the Automated Fingerprint Information System, we can check nationally if people have criminal records. And that's how strongly I feel about this. If a person has a position of trust, they're to act as if they're trustworthy by showing everyone that they're trustworthy and not doing inappropriate or untrustworthy things.
Thank you.
I'd like to also inform you that we did pass legislation ready for teachers and school administrators. It's an ethics certification law and we took all of the laws basically that's in the books and put it in this particular document for educators.
62 pages long. It's a great document. And it has hyperlinks. In fact, I encourage everyone who's an educator to read it. It was, if you're behind that, that's certainly hats off to you, because it's an excellent,
Or you can ask Frank.
okay, excellent document.
So, yes, it was passed last term.
Wow. If it's the same one I'm thinking of, I read a 62-page compilation of all the rules, regulations for the schools related to these issues before I came in here today.
Okay, several things I'd just like to mention is that the board is a policy board, not an operations board. The other is to go back to your business license, is that, and you do know this, and I thank you for doing this, for all new elected senators to go through an ethics training, and also all new appointed members. So that means you're going to have to go through it yourself, so you're going to have to find somebody to certify you that you've gone through the program. And lastly, and I do appreciate, of course, some of the recommendations that you've made in terms of the makeup or the composition of the board members. Unfortunately, is when it's open to election, then it's anyone who can run. So that means normally the first ones who normally want to run are educators. But I appreciate, the fact that, yes, we need to get a reflection of our students, those who are vested in our students, and those will be parents. Times have changed, so our FSM, we have more FSM students in our schools, and there should be a representative for them as well. So you have, like I said, next term to be able to make these recommendations with the new chairperson on the Committee of Education. So I hope then that you will reach out to the legislature to update, make better, of course, any of the laws applicable to the Department of Education. Mr. Sanchez, I'm sorry. Do you want to testify? I wasn't too sure. I know you walked in. Mr. Sanchez, yes? Oh, you just wanted to be present. Okay. Well, thank you very much. If there aren't any other comments from the body up here, and there's no one else out in the community who would, in the, yes? Oh, there, Mr. Agun, please come on up. Just state your name and your position, support or against, and you may proceed to speak.
Been on this table. Good evening, Speaker Wampet and Vice Speaker Cruz and members of the committee. I just emailed us a comment just a few minutes before I came, so I wasn't able to make some copies, but I won't rehash the Dr. McNinch's credentials, and you all know him, you all deal with him regularly, but I do know we came in at the same time at the University of Guam in 1996. I know that he knows the laws. He's very passionate about his opinions. He knows administration, he knows the board dynamics, he knows the dynamics between board and management, and he knows how to deal with the force fields that he has to work with to accomplish policy, implementing it, carrying it out. What I would like to comment on is his opinions. Ever since 1996, I've been listening to his opinions forever. But I'll tell you what, his opinions are sincere, and he's not once did I ever sense an opinion that was given to castigate someone or to put someone down. It's always to because this is what he believes based on his research, his knowledge, and what have you. And we sometimes disagree, and sometimes he'll bring me to his side, other times I'll bring him to my side. And one thing that I think I need to know, when we first came in, we came in at the same time, what he was interested in the local culture. And tomorrow, Ron, tell me how do the things work in the Chamorro culture, the language, the social activities, things of that nature. So I wanted to point out that he had that keen interest in the local culture. But we spent a lot of time together at the Dean Circle. Some thought it was a party house because we were by ourselves. But basically, it was a place of learning, and I learned a lot from Dr. McNinch, just sitting down and talking to him about issues. An example would be the Pardon Review Board. We were sitting down one time having an opinion session, and we talked about the governor at that time having so much pressure to grant pardons. And we were just having a constructive discussion and said, well, why don't we propose to put a sort of a cushion between the governor and the final decision and have a pardon review board. So we sat down and he proposed the creation of pardon review board as a buffer to the governor, to whoever it may be, then and in the future. But these are some of the productive sessions that we've had, and we've had quite a few. And I just wanted to validate and confirm that his opinions are intended to be constructive. Whether or not they're wrong in the end, it's a sincere opinion, and he's always more than willing to change his point of view. But he's an excellent teacher. He knows a lot about the law. He's self-taught. He knows a lot about administration, and he cares for the students. He cares for the students. I've seen this throughout the years that I've worked with him. He's helped students advance their education. The Truman Scholars, I mean, that's a very prestigious scholarship program, and he was able to prep students so that they compete and be selected for Truman Scholars. I believe we've had, about 6 or 7 scholars, and for the most part, he was responsible for prepping them to be competitive in the national level. He's helped students get internships, special internships in the criminal justice system, for example. He's helped students get into law school and doctoral schools and what have you. So he has a deep fundamental concern about students. And he has a love and a dedication to education, be it the University of Guam or even the Department of Education. So I think I've never really seen a more well-rounded person to sit on the board as a policy implementer and policy maker in the field of education. And I wholeheartedly support his nomination to the board. That's my testimony.
Thank you very much. Well, since I don't see anyone else interested then to provide any more additional testimonies, I want to thank all of you for coming out to show your support and for testifying. And I'd just like to say then that it is 7:30, and testimonies can be submitted, as I said earlier, to the Guam Legislature at 155 Hessler Place in Hagåtña. You can also email your testimony to Senator Underwood, all lowercase, no space, at guamlegislature.org, or you can fax it to 969-0975. So at 7:29, this public hearing or confirmation hearing is adjourned.